darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
Yeah, I apologize about that last video cutting off. It just did that to me, and I didn't clear my storage in my phone. So here I am. I left off on page 36 talking about the Templars and what they were accused of during their tortures and stuff like that. So it's getting pretty interesting. So I'm gonna finish off here. Okay, so this idol, named Baphomet, the goat of Mendes, has been called the secret god of the Templars. According to Levi, that's Eliphas Levi, Baphomet should be spelled Kabbalistically backwards. It consists of three abbreviations. Tem, spelled T-E-M, O-H-P-A-B. Templi Omnium Hominum Passus Abas. The father of the, which means the father of the temple of universal peace among men. Although it is a popular belief that the Knights Templars were for the most part unlearned and incapable of being addicted to an esoteric tradition requiring advanced scholarship, such an opinion is not supported by any direct proof. The average historian does not believe in the reality of a secret doctrine, therefore he has no inclination to search for one. He is satisfied to assume that the cupidity of the church and state accounts sufficiently for the extraordinary fanaticism which crushed the Templars. I'll take a drink of my water. So, in this work, we are attempting to show that the Order of the Temple descended from the secret schools and was now a direct source of later esoteric fraternities. And we have secret society. I have secret society books such as this one. Come on. Damn it. This one right here talking about they descended from the Templars. So, there you go. We know, for example, that the German theologian Johann Valentin Andrea was a moving spirit in the universal reformation of mankind attempted in the opening years of the 17th century. We reproduce herewith the title page of Andrea's Mythologia Christiania, published in 1619. The engraving is a mass of Masonic symbols and includes one of the earliest representations of the combining of the compass and square now familiar to all Freemasons. At the bottom of this plate is the three-faced idol of the Templars, represented exactly as it was originally described, partly bearded and placed in a small vase. We advance the speculation that this is a legitimate landmark connecting two important cycles of esoteric brotherhoods. The other symbols decorated this remarkable engraving merely support those already mentioned. Worthy of note is the little figure in the circle on the left side of the design above the word grammatica. Here a hand passes a human tongue to another hand, a graphic representation of the transference of a doctrine or word. As we become sensitive to the pattern underlying the descent of mystical fraternities, symbols originally obscure or unnoticed take on an obvious vitality. Charles the Great, Charlemagne, king of the Franks and Holy Roman Emperor, was born in AD 742 and is remembered by popular historians for the brilliance of his reign, the success of his arms, the number of his wives, and his diet of spitted venison. A considerable part of his life was devoted to the extension and protection of his domains and the quelling of rebellions among his subjects, but he found time in the interludes between his military campaigns to be the moving spirit in an important revival of arts and letters. And here's a little picture of him, portrait. He not only encouraged scholarship but practiced it moderately himself, and is believed to have obtained some proficiency in Latin grammar, rhetoric, dialectics, and astronomy. Such intellectual accomplishments were unusual to royalty of the 8th century and resulted in a minimum of grammatical errors in his edicts and legislations. It is probable that he could read and write, but he depended largely upon professional clerks for his extensive knowledge of history and religion. Like Akbar, the great Mongol, who attained the distinction of being the world's most highly educated illiterate, Charlemagne found it more economical to hire readers than to burden his mind and time with too much schooling. Although Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire by Pope Leo III, it was presented with the keys to the grave of St. Peter. He never was actually the sovereign of the Romans. His real position was that of protector and defender of the popes. He encouraged a revision of the text of the Latin Vulgate, and he left a considerable library of old manuscripts and records. He lived beyond his 70th year and is said to have died of pleurisy, which is spelled Pleurisy. I haven't even heard of that before. What is that? Let me look this up really fast. As fast as I can. Which really isn't matter because I gotta wait for this phone here to bring up Chrome. There it is. Also called pleuritis. It's an inflammation of the tissues that line the lungs and chest cavity. Infections such as the flu and certain medications can cause pleurisy. There we go, so I guess it's that. The historical Charlemagne became the central figure in an important cycle of myths and legends of profound interest to students of the esoteric tradition. The orders of chivalry were dedicated to the restoration of the primitive Christian church as it existed in the time of the apostles. In order to accomplish this restoration, it was necessary to rediscover the high secrets of the Christian mysteries. The esoteric association of the San Grail, the knighthood of the Round Table, the Knights Templars, the Knights Hospitallers of St. John of Jerusalem, and the Teutonic Knights have been called the military apostles of the religion of love. Heckthorn describes them as military troubadours who, under the standards of justice and right, fought against the monstrous abuses of the theocratic regime, consoled the widow, perhaps the Gnostic Church protected the sons of the widow, the followers of Mainz, and overthrew giants and dragons, inquisitors, and churchmen. And by the way, Masons, also in times of distress, call themselves sons of the widow. Is there no help for the widow's son? The powerful voice of the furious Roland, which made branches in the granite rocks of the mountains, is the voice of that so-called heresy which found its way into Spain, thus anticipating the saying of Louis XIV, quote, "There are no longer any Pyrenees," unquote. In AD 778, Charlemagne invaded Spain, captured Pamplona, and laid siege to Saragossa. In the midst of his campaign, news reached the king of a revolt among his Saxon subjects, and he was forced to abandon the Spanish war and hasten back to the Rhine. Incidentally, perhaps, the change in plans was not entirely unwelcome, for the siege of Saragossa was going badly. While withdrawing the main body of his army through the wild gorges and hazardous defiles of the Pyrenees, his rear guard was cut off and completely annihilated by the Basques, or the Basques, Basqueus. These mountaineers attained this signal victory by starting avalanches in narrow places along the road and hurling boulders down upon the Franks. Among the generals of Charlemagne's army who perished in this action was Rudelind, prefect of the Breton March. On this slight historical foundation was built the hero legend of Roland, one of the great epics of the age of chivalry. In its final form, the Chanson de Roland bears little resemblance to sober fact, but it is an excellent example of the allegories ingeniously devised by the troubadours for the perpetuation of their mystery cult. According to the legend of Roland, this culture hero is represented as the nephew of Charlemagne. He is one of the 12 peers forming the supreme council of the Frankish king. These peers, like the Knights of the Round Table, were nobles of exceptional valor and high integrity, all save one, the perfidious Lord Ganelon, whose treachery destroyed the sacred assembly. In the terms of this symbolism, Charlemagne, the initiated Christian king-emperor, represents Christ. His 12 peers are the apostles, Roland is John the Beloved, and Ganelon is Judas. Thus Charlemagne, the wise and righteous monarch, the glorious king and the preserver of the faith, like Solomon and Arthur, personify the sun and his peers, the 12 signs of the zodiac. Roland is a Christian Siegfried, a form of the hero of the world. In the legend of Roland, the Basques vanish entirely, and in their place is the vast army of the Saracens, the host of the unbelievers. The scene of the great battle is still the Pyrenees, and here the 12 peers, including Roland, Oliver, and the valiant Archbishop Turpin, the warrior priest, die together to protect the withdrawal of Charlemagne and the main body of his army. At the time of the actual battle, Charlemagne was only 36 years old, but in the legend he is represented as a venerable man with long white hair and beard. The treason of Ganelon is revealed to the king in a dream, and when from a distance he hears the last blasts of Roland's war trumpets, he returns to save his beloved nephew, but arrives too late. In the story, he wreaks a terrible vengeance upon the Saracens, but this has no foundation in fact. Lord Ganelon is tried for treason, found guilty, and torn to pieces by wild horses. An interesting reference to the court of Prester John occurs in the legends of Roland. In this account, Roland, afflicted with madness, wandered in the wilderness. At the court of Charlemagne, the peers resolved to seek the stricken hero, and Astolpho, the poet knight, declared that he would devote himself to the quest. By a happy accident, the winged horse of Atlantes, not Atlantis, Atlantes, it's basically Atlant, then you just add ES, had fallen into the keeping of Astolpho. Mounting the steed of high verse, the poet knight flew beyond the regions of Ethiopia and alighted in the wondrous realm of the mighty Prester John. According to this legend, Prester John was unhappy because he had been unable to cross the great mountains to the spring of eternal life, where old age was unknown and to which death never came. When Prester John attempted to reach this spring, horrible disasters came upon the expedition, and a voice from heaven spoke, quote, "Think not vain, man, to pry into the secret things of the Most High," unquote. From that time on, the court of Prester John was afflicted by the presence of 7 harpies that screamed and howled in the air and snatched the food from the banquet tables. Astolpho, by the blast of his magic horn, dispersed the harpies, and in gratitude, Prester John supplied a band of warriors to assist Astolpho in his search for Roland. Although Charlemagne outwardly sustained the papacy, he was the grand master of a mystical and philosophical fraternity which had descended from the bards, the druids, and the draughts. As an initiate king, he is revealed as a patron of learning and the arts and the virtual founder of the university system in Europe. He enriched the cloister schools, broadened their scope, and introduced many useful branches of secular instruction. His wars against the Saracens merely signified his victory over the subversive, antisocial forces of ignorance. Wagner, in his mystical music drama, Parsifal, places the magical garden of Klingzor, the sorcerer, in a valley of Moorish Spain. In the original presentation of the opera, Klingzor was costumed as a Near Eastern potentate, and the flower maidens, whom he controlled by his enchantments, were dressed like the Horus of the Arabian Nights entertainment. In recent years, the Metropolitan Opera in New York has revived the correct costuming. The earlier orders of chivalry practiced 3 degrees or grades of initiation. Candidates first became pages, then squires, then finally knights. After the mingling of the old military fraternities with such mystical sects as the Albigenses and the Ghibellines, the number of degrees was increased. In some groups, there were as many as 33 grades, somewhat similar to the structure of modern Freemasonry. The romances of the Round Table, the Holy Grail, and the Circle of Charlemagne certainly originated in the esoteric teachings of the Nordic, Gothic, and Celtic rites. Such legends as those of Parsifal, King of the Grail, and the Swan Knight Lohengrin, his son, are veiled reports of the secret schools of the adepts. Wagner's interpretation of the Grail cycle, though based upon early tradition, was largely colored by his own mystical convictions. As he glorified the orders of chivalry in his Grail operas, so he dignified the guilds, which had the same origin in his Meistersinger of Nuremberg. The knight initiates of the Brotherhoods of the Quest performed vigils, cultivated visions, and lived by rules and regulations as rigid as any monastic order. They had signs and passwords and were bound together by secret vows and obligations. They were dedicated to the protection of the weak, the preservation of righteous peace, and the perpetuation of certain spiritual and philosophical secrets. So when he's saying the protection of the weak, it sounds great, right? It sounds like it's Superman. It sounds like you're a good guy. You're wanting to protect the weak. Well, that's if you keep in mind that Manly P. Hall was kind of a socialist, humanistic-minded person, what he's trying to hint at is that these brotherhoods are basically, were the foundation, were the originators of the concepts of socialism, collectivism, and humanism. That's this whole point of this book so far. The protection of the weak. What was that Alice Bailey in or talking about I think it was Roosevelt's Four Freedoms. Freedom from want and freedom from fear. And I was pointing out that in a totally free individual free society with God-given liberty, it gets kind of rough for certain people, because you're free. Basically, you're relying on your Creator to help provide with your basic needs, putting your faith in that, and you're pretty much, doing everything on your own without any government assistance or government help or any help from anybody, and that can get rough for people sometimes. So, that's why many people actually go to the government or go to welfare or go to whatever. And so that's the whole idea, is that the government needs to, save and protect the weak. Protect the weak from themselves, because they can't take care of themselves, therefore they must be taken care of for their own good. So, when the Inquisition accused the Knights Templars of worshipping demons and practicing obscene and abominable rites, these accusations merely referred to the pagan doctrines held in secret by this order of chivalry. After the destruction of the Templars, the esoteric tradition of Europe disappeared from public view to be restated cautiously in the curious terminology of the alchemists, the Kabbalists, the Rosicrucians, and even the astrologers. The orders of the quest gave place to the orders of the great work. The elixir of life in the alchemical bottle is identical in meaning with the blood of Christ in the holy chalice. Even the dragons and monsters of the hero myths survived in the hieroglyphical drawings of the alchemistical philosophers. Charlemagne with his 12 peers is Odin, the Grand Master of the Draughts, seated in council with the 12 aces. I don't want to say asses. It's spelled, it looks like it, A-S-E-S, without the extra S in there. In the high and secret palace of Asgard. There I go with that word ass again. A-S-G-A-R-D, Asgard. The brave Lord Roland is Tammuz, Dionysus, Sigurd, Balder, Sir Galahad, and Robin Hood. All these gallant champions of the human cause, these defenders of the weak, these princes of the philosophic empire, these soldiers of spiritual democracy, personify the initiates of the mystery schools. The adept is the eternal hero of the world. And that says a lot, too, about our modern myths and legends and our entertainment industry and stuff. All these superheroes and what they esoterically represent. And don't get me wrong, I was a big fan of Superman, Batman. So, I found all the Masonic shit, the Batman, and the Skull and Bones reference in that Batman 60s TV show on season 1, episode 33. So check that out. According to that episode, Bruce Wayne was at the Wayne Manor was having a party, and 2 people were looking at Bruce Wayne's grandfather's portrait. And they were saying, one of them goes, "Did you know that he was a member of Skull and Bones?" And the lady goes, "Member? He founded Skull and Bones." So, yeah, talk about, just mocking in plain sight. People back in the 60s just went over their head. The Manicheans, the Neo-Manicheans, and the Post-Manicheans went far afield to find grist for their mill. There was an old Druidic footing under the culture of the Gauls. One of the 3 branches of the Druid order was known as the Bards. They were the wandering poets and minstrels, the singers of the mysteries, concealing profound spiritual truths under gay songs, stories, fables, and myths. The Bards were a closely organized group. They had signs, words, and secret means of knowing each other. They had a sign of distress, which compelled others of their order to come to their assistance in time of trouble. These wandering singers and storytellers played an important part in the social and ethical life of early Europe. They carried news from place to place, and needless to say, the reports which filtered through the bards took on a coloring appropriate to the problem of the moment. In this way, these poet-singers exercised a powerful religious, philosophical, and political influence. And I think that I'll just, since I really intended to just make this a half an hour video, but since I cut off, I decided to read some more. Here's just a bookmark. So, yeah, so, I'm going to be doing more, I'm going to be doing more of videos with Manly Hall, and I think I might read some Clymer's work again. Just document as much as I can, get the truth out. We are really at a place now in America where it's really going downhill quick, so we better wake up. So those who are watching and stuff, I don't know if you guys are preparing for anything, but we've been preparing on and off for a lot of things. We've been getting anything we can, like whenever we get paid, stocking up on water, just the basic essentials, just the things you need to protect you and your family if things do fall apart. Song's so profound today, considering what's going on. Okay. Alrighty, well, that's it for now. Have a good one.